everybody, welcome to this watercolor tutorial of how to paint some wildflowers. These were growing in my yard and I have the list of paints there and the brushes I used. Thank you so much for joining me, and we're going to start with the coneflower shape, and it's called actually the coneflower and the black-eyed Susan are all in the Rudbeckia family, and you can also call that Echinacea, and they come in different colors, and I really love them. I was actually pulling out weeds in my yard, so I'm looking at my hands like, wow, they look really dirty. But I am a gardener, and I have chickens, and I love to paint watercolors, and I love to teach, so I'm glad you're here. And what I'm doing is I'm just starting with the middle cone shape of, I think it's the black-eyed Susan, and I'm just creating that hump, and I'm just kind of shading one side. I'm sure I'm going to come back to it later and shade it a little bit more when it's dry. The top of the little coneflower has these little tiny just hairs, I'm going to call them, just sticking up just at the tip. And I painted that in with the tip of my brush. I'm using number 12, which is a pretty big brush, but the top of it goes to a really good point. And I believe it's called a Princeton Long Round Velvet Touch. It's one of my favorites. So I just dipped it in my yellow and yellowish orange, and I brought it over and I tapped it, and I'm just going to push my brush down and pull it out and make these petals a little bit on the shorter side. They're a little shorter compared to the coneflower, which is a little bit longer leaves. So you can see this is a very beautiful variegated Rudbeckia plant. So the brown from the middle bled into that petal a little bit, but that's fine. I'm using pretty thick paint here. It's not too watery and not too thick. It's just right. It's like milky or something. And I just grabbed a little bit of my next color over, which is a reddish orange. It's probably cadmium red, and just adding that to it a little bit. And I'm just going to keep going around and adding all of these petals. And the back petals will be very short in the back, and the ones in the front are just going to be the longer ones. Yeah, so I flipped one petal up. It was just sort of curling up, and I thought that was really pretty. It's nice to add variation to your drawings and to your flower shapes if you can. The more the better. I pretty much mix my hooker's green in with my olive green just to make it a little different color. And I made my stem coming out of the middle, and I just basically the same way you do the petals, you're just going to press, like you hold down and you press and you release. And then I just decided to go back and add a little bit of a serrated edge to the leaf because that's the shape of the leaf. You want to really observe your plants that you have and really try to emulate its essence that way. If it does it have serrated edges on the leaves, do the veins on it alternate, or do they meet in the middle together at the same spot? So that is really how you determine what your species are, basically. So I try to make my leaves, even though they're very simplified here, pretty accurate as far as the shapes. Okay, we're going to start working on the Echinacea plant, which is another Rudbeckia family. But the difference between an Echinacea and the Black-Eyed Susan type is that the cone and the Black-Eyed Susans are tall and like a big bump, and the Echinaceas are flatter and wider and more spikier too, whereas you can see on the Black-Eyed Susan, the middle bump is on the smooth side and the spikes are kind of short except for on the top where I pushed them out. And then on the Echinacea, it's pretty spiky, so the whole thing is very spiky. So I'm just grabbing my number 12 brush here. It's fully loaded with like the red, and I'm touching that brownish shape so it's bleeding in there, and I'm just, you know, pushing it down in the middle and then lifting it to make that edge at that tip of the petals. And right now I think I'm just pulling out a little bit of water. I didn't like how wet it was and I didn't like the bleed, so you could fix it before it gets too far if you don't like what's going on. I'm grabbing some more red. I want some more color and vibrancy here, and I'm just adding a teeny bit of my pink, and I'm going to go back and create some more petals. So you're just pressing and lifting. There you go. And I'm going to just add some to the other ones. And while it's still wet, you can adjust the color of it. I added some little stripes in there because the veins of the petals, and it's pretty subtle. And there I went back and added some more. That's looking pretty good, don't you think? And now we're going to do some smaller ones at the edges, at the back side, making those a little bit thinner because you're seeing them a little bit more sideways back there. And that looks pretty awesome. So now I'm just going to do what we did before, and I'm going to add my stem and add some leaves. And I added a little bit of the lighter olive green, and I came back and added some dark to it. Because I have to play with everything all the time. That's what I have to do. So, but isn't this all about play and having fun? I hope so. That's what I would love for you to do, is just play and have fun. The more you play and have fun and experiment, the better you get. So now I'm going to start on the daisy, and it's a white flower, so I made a yellow center, so it just kind of gets your bearing of where you're going to be starting to put your petals. And I put a little green dot in the middle, and all around the edges of the daisy is like little dots of little stamens. So I added those, and I'm going to mix a purplish gray, I think. This way, you know, whites are not always white. Whites are different shades of gray. The only way you can see white is if you add, you know, a gray or a darker color to it. So that's what we have to do. We have to define our leaves by adding basically the shadow areas of our petals. So I'm just deciding where I want them. There's smaller petals and there's larger petals. And I have a, it looks like the number 6 brush there. It has a pretty good tip on it. And so I'm just pulling that color out the same way we made the other petals, and deciding, I go around the flower, so I'll start on one side, then I'll add some petals to the other side, and I'll just sort of fill them in after that. It's a pretty easy way to go around. And it's easier to do the flower straight on than it is sometimes on when the flower's on an angle. Could be a little bit tricky too. So I decided to use a little bit of very light yellow wash for some of my petals because I felt like if you look in the sun, if you're in the sun and the sun is shining on something, usually there's a yellow cast where the sun is hitting it. And in the shadow areas, there is a gray, more of a cool color. So I'm trying to show here, and I'm trying to zoom in on it, that you can have the light where the sun is shining to be a little bit more yellow, and the shadow colors should be a cool, because that, in nature, you know, cooler colors recede and more yellow colors and warmer colors tend to come closer to you. Now this is one of my favorite flowers. It's kind of weird looking. It's sort of, I don't know, it's got a weird alien look to it somehow. But what I love about it is it attracts hummingbirds. The hummingbirds are all over these. And these are called Monarda or bee balm. And early on in the century, when we had the Boston Tea Party and all the tea ended up in the ocean, they actually used the leaves of this, which is called a bergamot, to create tea. So they had this growing in their yards, and this is what they made their breakfast tea with at that time. So just a little tidbit for you to know. I'm starting with the cone middle shape again, and it's brown and it's bumpy. It's pretty round, so it's actually rounder than the Echinacea, and it is not as tall as the Black-Eyed Susan. And it does have a lot of little bumps all over it. So Now I'm going to mix my reds. So I'm taking a little bit of my, I think I have quinacridone red there and a quinacridone pink, and I'm mixing it more with that cadmium red that I have there. It's more orangey. And it's quite a bright, beautiful flower. I'm sure that's why the hummingbirds are so attracted to it. If you notice, the hummingbird feeders are usually red. And a lot of people color the water red, but you're not supposed to color the water with dye. You just can make the syrup and just leave it with clear water. The hummingbird doesn't care what color the water is. She just likes he just likes her pollen, her nectar. So here I am. The petals actually have like a two-part petal to it. It kind of gets skinny, then fat, then skinny. I call it like little mouths or something. They're like little mouths or little tiny trumpets, but only with two little petals, and they have a teeny little spike at the end. So I'm trying to go around and create those shapes. And underneath is a lot of little leaves right under that bulbous middle part. It's a really cool flower, and I have fun painting it. Now we're going to create a cosmos plant, and they're very light and feathery kinds of flowers. They have very feathery leaves and feathery petals, and they're almost paper-like. They're so light. And I started off here paint dabbing on the middle part of the flower, and I felt it was too muddy, so I dabbed it away and I cleaned my brush with clear water, and then I came back and added the yellow, and there you go. Then I'm just going to add the yellow and start all over on top of this, and then I'm going to take my brown and add the little brown stamens that go all the way around the middle of the flower. To do the petals, I'm mixing my ultramarine blue with my quinacridone red and the other pink that I have there, quinacridone pink, and I'm trying to get that purpley pink color that I just showed you with the flower. But the Cosmos flowers are all different colors. They're yellow or purple or a very light pink or a purpley light pink. So you decide what color you want your petals to be, because really it's the same thing as far as how to create the petals. So we're just going to get a very milky color going here, and I'm going to press down the point of my brush into the middle and pull it out and create a fatter, shorter leaf or petal, and the edges of them are jaggy. They're not so, they don't come to a point, they're kind of jaggy and very light and airy, just like the rest of the plant. Okay, that looks beautiful, and we're going to start to paint the green, which is a lighter yellowy more green. It's very feathery and light. So we're going to take our brush and the tip of our brush and just create a nice stem, and from that stem we're going to create a lot of feathery leaves, and they're just like long and skinny, and they branch out kind of like regular tree branches do. I'm actually observing my plant as I'm painting here, so if you don't have these growing in your yard, it's really easy to find images. I go to pixabay.com or unsplash.com, and I find a lot of reference photos there for pretty much anything. People are really generous with their photos, and they upload commercial-free images that you can use for anything on these two websites, and so they're my favorite. And the other way to get images is take them with your phone. I mean, a lot of times I go to the supermarket, especially in the spring, and all of these flowers, or like your Home Depot or whatever store you have near you, with the plants, the nurseries, just take out your phone and take a bunch of flowers. I probably have thousands of them, and yet I still go to Unsplash or or pixabay.com. So here I have a lot of my flowers, my leaves made, and I'm just going to add a little bud to it, and kind of darkening up just a few of the stems just to make it pop just a little bit more. The bud is just a lot of little green leaves on a little base, like a little round spot. The next flower we're going to do is the blue cornflower that you see a lot of times at the edge of the road when you're driving down the road, and they're so pretty. That blue color, it just like, it's so beautiful, and it just makes me happy to see them, that nobody's mowing them over. It's little things that make me happy in life, and wildflowers is definitely one of them. So I'm just mixing my blue. I'm using the French ultramarine and my cerulean blue, and it's a little tricky to make this. It's sort of a lavender, purpley, bluey color. So I just keep mixing until I'm pretty happy with it. So I do think, though, I like to drop in a little pink to it and let it mix basically on the paper a little bit, because it just gives the flower a little bit of variation. So for this one, it's the underside of it has this big round bulb thing, and then the flower kind of sticks out of it. It's sort of like a windmill on the top. It's very unusual and beautiful. So it's funny because the little petals on there are very similar to that Monarda that we just did, but a lot smaller. If you look at them very closely, they have almost the same shape of like a V on a stick, like a little mouth sticking out, like a little trumpet of some sort. And so there you have it. It's a lot of variated color that blends on the paper. So I'm going to start over and do another one, and it's going to be more straightforward. Mixing the same thing, adding a little bit of that pink, and it's just full of those little petals that radiate around that center, and there's no middle bulb part like you see with the other flowers. It's sort of underneath, and that's what that big bulb is under it, and it's very unusual and very beautiful flower. All right, so now I'm going to do some lavender because I have a lot in my yard. I like to grow it for my chickens because if you put it in the coop when you dry it, it calms them at night. It makes them feel calm, and it makes their coop smell a lot better. So I like to grow it for them. It's a really healthy plant to eat, and it's just, I love lavender. It's just so beneficial. It helps you sleep at night if you were to make an essential oil out of it. I like to put it in body scrubs, so I'll take some sugar and some olive oil and put it in a little mason jar and add lavender essence to it. And it's just like if you take a bath and you scrub your body with it, you just smell so good and you just drift off to sleep. So what I'm doing here is I'm mixing yet again the purple, the ultramarine purple, blue with my the pink to create a purple, and I'm trying to actually let some of these kind of mix together on the paper. I'm just kind of stamping my brush to make those little marks of the little lavender petals, and they kind of start at the top and then they skip a space, then you see another little bloom, then they skip a space and you see another little bloom. And when we're done with this, we'll let them dry a little bit and we'll add some green to make the stems. And there's actually sometimes a little teeny leaf that goes under these little tiny petals that holds this together. All right, now that we're finishing up our 7 little wildflowers, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please like and subscribe and tell your friends, because the more people I have liking my videos, the more the YouTube will boost them for me, and I would love to teach you some more. So right now I'm going to do a real speed painting of a bouquet using the flowers we just learned. So if you practice them, I'm using Canson XL paper here. It's only like $10 in Walmart, so I'm not using my arches for this. So it's really great to practice on, because you don't feel like, you know, it's too precious because you spent a lot of money on the paper. So it's a great, really great paper to practice on. And believe me, I make a lot of mistakes, or I have a lot of practice sheets, let's say, and it just helps you all the time to just get better and better and better. So you learn some muscle memory, and you learn more about how the watercolor reacts and how you react to it, which is a big thing, and I think it's all great. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I hope to see you in my next video. Take care, and I'll see you then.